What? Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.
What's up, Fantasy Points? We have a special edition of Outside the Box for the Christmas 2-game slate. We've got the Chiefs at the Steelers. I don't remember who's home. Ravens at the Texans, we'll say. Maybe it's the inverse of that. I'm not sure. Either way, I am here with the master of dank stats, my good friend, Scott Barrett. Scott, how are you doing on this Christmas Eve?
I'm doing good, man. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. And any big plans?
I'll probably be working some tomorrow. What about you?
Same. I think tomorrow I'm going to have basically off. I'm going to be working my ass off for the next few hours, then going to my in-laws for Christmas Eve party, and then I'll probably work some more later tonight. But I think tomorrow I'm going to have basically off, and then back to the grind on Thursday for the Thursday night football slate. But should have one day at least spending with my family, so that should be fun. Okay, we're going to be going as usual structure. We're going to go position by position, quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, tight ends. Maybe we'll talk defenses, kickers. We're going to keep this about under an hour. We don't have ownership projections for this slate, so we're not really going to be able to figure out exactly what the chalk is going to be. But I have a good idea of what the chalk is going to be, and it's going to be Lamar Jackson on this slate. I would imagine he's going to be 50+% owned. It's been a pretty nice matchup recently. He has been largely matchup proof. So I think Lamar Jackson is going to be 50+% owned. If he is, Scott, how much Lamar Jackson do you think you're going to want?
I think he's far and away the best quarterback play of the slate. I think he's awesome. I always think back to, what was that week 16 or week 17 game against the Dolphins last year, where we kind of hadn't played Lamar for a while because Harbaugh was like, yeah, we really like to lean run heavy inside the red zone, and the running backs have stepped up there. And so the offense was so productive. It just, Lamar wasn't getting those super valuable touchdowns. And then, he became the front runner for the MVP, and he threw 5 touchdown passes against them. Like the Ravens, that could just flip on a dime. And so you're seeing over the last 4 weeks, Lamar has 12 passing touchdowns, 3 per game. Derrick Henry has 0. And so just this narrative in my head, maybe they're trying to compete with Josh Allen, get him yet another MVP. So certainly aids in the spike week argument, but it's also he's just, I don't know, so much better than the other 3 quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes, Hollywood Brown only had a 25% route share last week, but you can argue his mere presence really bolsters the offense, because all defenses really had to account for is Xavier Worthy's freakish deep speed. But you have Hollywood getting 8 targets in the short to intermediate area of the field, keeps defenses honest, opens things up for Xavier Worthy. Maybe it's just I haven't seen any upside from the pass catchers or even the running backs over the last, 6 or so weeks now. And this is a really tough matchup against the Steelers on paper. CJ Stroud, I do like. I know he's kind of sucked this year, but I call him a dome baby or a dome merchant, whatever it was in a tweet. And this is true for Nico Collins as well. But just since he's entered the league, he averages 354 passing yards per game in a dome, 212 passing yards per game without a dome. So at home in Houston, he's going to get the dome. So I don't know, maybe people are sleeping on him. And then Russell Wilson gets a big bump from George Pickens theoretically, but it's also Kansas City's been the best defense all year at shutting down wide receiver ones. I think only Judy had a 100-yard game against them this year. So those are kind of my thoughts. You're the game theory expert, so you can tell us what to do with ownership, but Lamar is certainly the best play. And then, on whatever non-Lamar team you play Derrick Henry, and which quarterback would you favor then?
Yeah. And man, it's a tough slate from that standpoint. And I did find one source that has ownership projections, and they have Lamar significantly under 50% ownership, like just over 30% projected ownership. And if that's the case, I'm going to be over the field on Lamar. I think I'm with you. Like we just you lead into the best play if he's not getting crazy high ownership. But yeah, if you want to get away from Lamar, I pulled up schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed over the past 5 weeks here to kind of get an idea of the best matchups. And it's tough matchups across the board. This is similar to what we saw. I mean, this is, I started doing my research for this slate, and it took me a minute to realize that it's the exact same 4 teams that we had on the Saturday slate.
Yeah, that's right.
which I had not realized until last time. I was like, oh, that's actually kind of helpful.
I also DM'd you a condensed version of this where it really just shortened it down to all 4 teams.
You did.
And it's like, they're all below average matchups for the quarterback. Lamar has the best matchup, but and CJ Stroud, Ravens are giving up the second most passing yards per game this season. They have been better in recent weeks, like you mentioned on our last OTB. But yeah, I mean, Steelers brutal on paper, Chiefs pretty rough on paper, and then you got that game.
Yeah, it was so somebody mentioned it on a stream that I did. Maybe it was on my own channel. But I was talking about how it's been tougher against the Ravens in recent weeks. So we were targeting them like crazy with passing games against the Ravens, biggest pass funnel. And then in recent weeks that went away. And apparently they made a change to personnel in the defense. Like they moved around a defensive back. I don't remember exactly what it was, but there was somebody gave a good explanation for it. Other than just like, yeah, they just somehow got better out of nowhere. It sounded like maybe there was an actual change in the personnel that led to, but in recent weeks, like you said,
I love that. I think that makes sense. 205 yards to Russ, 218 to Herbert, 118 to Hurts, 123 to Tim Boyle, 217 to Russ Wilson. Before that, it was like 450 to Joe Burrow, 350 to Jameis, 400 to Baker. So they were going crazy. One thing you could say with this recent stretch of schedule, though, is you had Russ twice, you had Herbert, you had Hurts, and then you had like the Tim freaking Boyle.
Right.
And so it's just like a bunch of teams that, kind of don't lean into the pass. So right. I don't know, maybe your narrative on they made one change and made all the difference, or could just be that. But I mean, CJ Stroud also now down Tank Dell, and he has really struggled this year.
I do think that CJ Stroud probably my second favorite quarterback on this slate. Just because like you said, like there is some data that suggests maybe they've gotten a lot better in recent weeks, but like you said, it's pretty small sample size. And like, what do you really make of a game against Tim Boyle? Like, even if it is like schedule adjusted, obviously is trying to account for the quarterback play, like the level of quarterback. But when you're so bad, like at Tim Boyle levels, it's hard to read too much into it. So I think still possibly Baltimore is a beatable defense. So I think CJ Stroud is a pretty good secondary bet. Also with Tank Dell out, like you get John Mechie is looking a little bit juicier.
Dude, that's an absolute mess. We'll have to dig into that.
We will have to dig into that a bit. But could be interesting. So yeah, I think probably Lamar my favorite, and then CJ Stroud second favorite. And then it's kind of a toss up. I don't really love either Russell Wilson or Patrick Mahomes. The Chiefs have been a little bit more vulnerable in recent weeks. So I guess, and Pickens coming back obviously helps Russ quite a bit. So you can make that argument. But yeah, I think it's probably just the top two my favorites. And then kind of I'll mix in 10-15% of Russ and Mahomes most likely. Anything else on quarterbacks?
I don't think so. Not for now. Maybe when we start building lineups or talking stacks.
Yeah, it's usually the position that I like to rush through the most because it's the most straightforward. At running back, Derrick Henry has the highest projection on the slate. He is 8,200. Man, he did great even against the Steelers. He appears to be just matchup proof. How are we feeling about Derrick Henry?
Yeah, on paper, certainly the best running back play by actually sort by fantasy points per dollar.
Yep.
So I actually don't agree with this. I prefer Henry by a significant margin, but again, like the concern is, like I said, Lamar's really been greedy with those touchdowns this year. With Joe Mixon, it's like the stat I kept referencing was he has 100+ rushing yards and a touchdown in 7 of 10 healthy games this year. The 3 games in which he did not get there, and I think scored single digit fantasy points, were all losses against bottom 5 run defenses. And what does he get this week? He gets a game where the Ravens are favorites and they have a top 5 run defense. So it doesn't, to me, look like a Mixon game. Could be a game where he falls short of expectations. Part of the problem is just like all these other running backs are so gross. But yeah, I would definitely favor Henry. Why don't you? I didn't look this up. Why don't you pull up in the data suite the weekly reports fantasy points scored, and I'll pull this up alongside you. I want to see how negatively correlated Lamar and Henry are this year. I just click on positions, and add running back to that.
Oh yeah, okay. By the way, I just want to before we get too into this, because we finished quarterback, and then somebody brought up injuries to Steelers defense, and I see Joey Porter Jr. has been ruled out. Does that make a significant difference in terms of the matchup for the Chiefs?
Yeah, it's a slight boost. You don't really have like a wide receiver one. I think we were projecting a shadow. I think we were just going to assume he sticks to his side against them.
Okay, but then Mixon's maybe a little bit of a better matchup for Patrick Mahomes, just not having to deal with Joey Porter, dealing with a backup. Always a pretty nice upgrade to face the backup instead of a good cornerback. So
JPJ might be the second best cornerback in football this year.
Oh, you think so? Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's a good call from Chris Ostro. That maybe that's something we should, on a 2-game slate, like you need to try to find every angle. So that's a good angle to look at. All right. So what are you making of this chart here?
Yeah, so that's a negative correlation, but it's not as negative as I kind of expected. And so you saw, 26 and 30, 25 and 36, 20 and 25, 24 and 26. And for a 2-game slate, that's really fine. So I wouldn't worry too much about stacking them on a 2-game slate. And then Mixon again, I probably like less than our projections, but our projections are saying he's the best value of the position. Maybe no Tank Dell. You really seen them lean into the run. I don't. Again, Ravens supposed pass funnel and game script unideal. Jaylen Warren, I would agree, is the third best. If you want to pull up the snap share report, you've really seen him sort of take over.
Rep share, snap share. There you go.
Nice. Yeah, Steelers. Then you have to scroll over or zoom out.
Scroll over. Wait.
To the right. I would click only running backs. Only running backs.
Yeah.
And then you're cut off at the end there. Okay, there you go. Yeah, so you've seen really a Jaylen Warren take over this backfield over the last 3 weeks. You can say that's due to game script. I think maybe a little, but game script isn't going to be favorable to the Steelers this week. I don't know how much upside there is, with Najee still getting goal line work and all that, but I do think on this super gross running back slate, he's certainly one of the better values.
Yeah, and that's so over the past 3 weeks, it looks like he's really taken over. If we look at the bell cow report for just the 3 weeks, I just want to see like how the usage is actually broken down. Like is it
mostly pass catching, right?
Let's see. The expected fantasy points are better, still less than 10 expected fantasy points per game.
Yeah.
But 25 carries to Najee's 31 over that span, but 10 targets on 57% route participation to Najee, 2 on 18%. It's interesting. So Jalen Warren, it's a pretty big flip from last week. Like his projection last week to this week has shot up, surpassed several other players. He's also up to 5,500. So then how much interest do you have in Najee Harris?
Oh, not much.
Okay.
But like here's the thing. Well, it's just not as strong of a spot and less usage. So I get why Warren projects so much better than the Kansas City running backs, but when you're talking about like DFS tournaments, it might just be better for you in terms of upside to just like close your eyes and pick one of the two Kansas City running backs and hope they get the touchdown. There's going to be more touchdown equity there. For what it's worth, Andy Reid said their roles could flip from game to game. So you really are guessing. Hunt had the touchdown last week, the team's only goal line carry. But like XFP is basically even over the last two games. I kind of like Hunt more. I just kind of think, maybe Pacheco isn't fully right coming off of injury. They kind of want to protect him heading into the playoffs anyway. So yeah, if you want to go back to the snap share report and look at it for the Chiefs, I know Hunt has outsnapped him too. All right, so they were tied week 15, week 16. You saw a nice little boost for Hunt. And yeah, Pacheco just hasn't played well since coming back. I know Hunt isn't anything special either, but maybe a little more dependable. Don't worry about injuries.
Yeah, so you actually prefer Kareem Hunt?
I mean, it feels like a coin flip, but
yeah, it really does.
Yeah, I give the lean to Hunt to only making one lineup.
They are both expected to get like 20% or lower ownership. So on a 2-game slate, I think both are like pretty strong bets at relatively low ownership.
This is like frustrating. It feels like this is what the slate comes down to. It's like gambling on these super gross running backs.
Yeah. And you can see it's a bottom, like 12 or so matchup. Not a great matchup, but like you said, it's kind of that way across every position to some extent.
Yeah.
So not a lot of interest in Najee. You play in any? Would you have interest in a large field tournament? Do you want to make a bet on Samaje Perine? Cordarrelle Patterson had the receiving touchdown last week. I'll say this on a 2-game slate that's expected to be like pretty low scoring. I think it's more viable to play, backup running backs, like the kind of grosser plays. I don't know who the best are on this slate. I don't see there's none that like I totally love. I think like you can make a case for Samaje Perine just because in the right game script, sometimes they'll use him in like a 2-minute drill and he'll just rack up 4 catches, and if one's a touchdown, 12 fantasy points might be the second highest scoring running back on the slate kind of thing. Do you have any kind of read on the, outside of, obviously the Steelers have 2 usable running backs. The Chiefs have 2 usable running backs. Is there anybody else that you have much interest in? Yeah,
I think Keaton Mitchell's a little interesting. I don't think Justice Hill's going to play this week.
Yeah.
And, he averaged like 10 yards per carry last year, but I don't think he's seen a single offensive snap. He's only played on special teams. But he had some explosive plays last year. I don't know that I'd play him, but definitely deserves consideration. Probably more so than Perine or Cordarrelle Patterson or anyone like that.
I was kind of thinking the same too. Do you think there's any could it be Rasheen Ali instead? Since he's actually been playing,
it could be.
They
loved him last year, and it's so weird that he hasn't seen a single snap.
Yeah, it kind of makes me think that maybe he's not totally healthy. But
he probably
I agree
is.
with you. It's one of those two. One of those two to me is going to be the most interesting. But it's just I don't think maybe I should look at the Coach Week Index Discord to see if there has been any indication there. But I don't think I've seen anything suggesting who's next man up for them necessarily. But I agree with you. Both are probably he's probably a pretty good flyer option at really low ownership, since he's not really being projected for much. Okay, wait here. I did get. Oh no, sorry. This is back in November. I thought I was current here. I'm just looking at the I'm not seeing anything recent.
So
in the
December
first week
2nd, which isn't recent.
Yeah.
Harbaugh was asked why Keaton Mitchell isn't active. He said he wanted to give Rasheen Ali a chance. He's working hard, blah, blah, blah. But I like those two guys. They'll both be in the mix moving forward. Okay. I don't know.
And then that was a lie, apparently.
Yeah. And then apparently that was
in
a
the
lie.
mix.
So yeah, maybe it's Rasheen Ali, but either way, it's just such a gamble.
Hopefully Mitchell is inactive and we can just play Rasheen Ali or vice versa. that would make things easier. Something to keep an eye on, I guess. Okay. Any other running backs we should talk about?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. All right. Well, we've got some interesting wide receiver situations to talk through. The Houston one is, I think, the most interesting, and you already mentioned we kind of need to work our way through this. The Nico Collins part, we don't really need to work our way through. He's just the best wide receiver play on the slate, I think. Would you agree with that?
Well, if you click on fantasy points per dollar, we actually don't have it that way. Although I do agree with you. We have Zay Flowers projected for 3.6 points above his projection. That is, I guess, baking in, the Justice Hill injury, the Nelson Aguilar injury, where, maybe he gets more of that short area work, which, he had a 100-yard game last week. He still feels really volatile to me. And like, that's kind of who he's been this year, where I think only him and Jamar Chase have as many games with 21.5 DraftKings fantasy points, but he's, hit single digit fantasy points in just about all the other games. But Rashad Bateman's also really interesting to me. So it's a really bad schematic for Rashad Bateman, who, by the way, is only 4,800. It's a bad schematic, but it's a good on paper, clearly. And here's a stat for you. I wanted to look at cumulative team ass allowed, Neil.
Mm-hmm.
And so which defenses had the worst secondaries, and the Texans were bottom too. And that might be kind of surprising just because they're not giving up a lot of yards to wide receivers. They've given up a ton of touchdowns. And like, that's from tracking ass is something that seems really predictive, is like the top ass guys score a lot of touchdowns. And I think it works for defenses too, where you're giving a lot of separation. You're going to get those explosive plays. And so despite the bad schematic, I still really like Bateman. Again, no Aguilar. I think there's a good chance he can break off a long touchdown against the Texans. I mean, that's kind of what he's done all year. So I think maybe have a rule where it's like minimum 1 Flowers, 1 Bateman. I think you could do that. I think you play both on Lamar teams. And then,
Okay.
let's dig into the Texans. And we could also buy on their route share report.
Yeah. So just before we move on, I just wanted to mention it is the 4th best matchup in terms of schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed to wide receivers over the past 5 weeks, specifically to slot receivers and wide receivers lining up out wide right, which I always struggle with the left and right thing. Like, I have no idea how often a wide receiver is like glued to one side of the field. Is this like I assume that varies team to team, and I'm not sure exactly where to look. So do you have anything to make of the left wide receiver versus right wide receiver, like pretty big difference in splits for them? Do you have any kind of read on?
Yeah, it's just another boost to Zay, who runs about 20% of his routes from the left, where Bateman's closer to 50%.
Okay, good to know. Okay,
I'm guessing that's where Derek Stingley is.
Gotcha. All right, and then the Texans you want to get into. Do you say snap share or route share?
Route share.
All right, I've got route share pulled up.
Okay. All right. So you see Tank Dell missed in week 4. What happened? Mechie barely played. Robert Woods 70%. And then last week, if you want to click on week 18.
What do you mean click? Oh, just week 18?
No. Just sort by. So where it says W18.
W18.
Where it's right there, yeah.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Click on that.
Yep.
And so you see Robert Woods 3rd, but if you filtered only for the second half, he's at 83%, tied with Collins and Schultz. So it really looked like he was the fill-in, but Mechie sat out in this game. And then if you look at Mechie, you're gonna have to scroll down. You know, he had seen this big uptick in usage prior to his injury. I think it was a shoulder injury, and then he was inactive last week. He's going to play this week, so it's a little bit of a gamble. But I would lean more on Mechie filling that role. Robert Woods is 32 years old. He's just so dusty. He had a full-time role last year, just hit single-digit fantasy points every week. So I really don't see much upside for him. Another wrench being thrown into this is Deontay Johnson. And so, like, on one hand, I really don't think we should expect much. Like Amari Cooper, Mike Williams, DeAndre Hopkins, they were all under a 35% route share in their first game with a new team. They all haven't hit a 60% route share in any game with their new team all year. And so I think that just speaks to like how difficult it is to learn a brand new offense on the fly. The major caveat though is like when you sign a Deontay Johnson, like what a freaking headache he caused for the Ravens, right? It's, you know, he wants to be on the field. He wants the ball. Maybe that's different. And this is a player I love, all-time ass God. And so it's just like a total headache. Personally, my lean would be Mechie, but this isn't really anything you could feel great about. If you go over to the target share report, like you will see Dalton Schultz seeing more usage in recent weeks. So like I do think Schultz will be the number 2 for all intents and purposes, but it wouldn't surprise me if Mechie surprises us for a big game, or if, you know, they somehow get Deontay like 4 screens on 12 routes. Mechie had that one big game against the Lions, otherwise hasn't really done anything.
So you think that Deontay Johnson is going to play immediately?
I think he gets like 10 to 15 routes maybe.
Interesting.
But we really don't know. It's that's all just narrative based on the fact that the guy was an asshole for not getting more routes, right?
Right. So maybe they just immediately.
But they have like playoff intentions, so
yeah. Yeah. So I'm with you on John Mechie was one that is the most interesting to me of the Houston guys, but it is also very like convoluted, so it's sort of hard to know what to make of it exactly. Let me see if I had any other notes on so one sort of positive for him, and I think it's been kind of a theme on this slate, is a lot of nice matchups for slot receivers. Ravens defense has allowed the 12th most schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to slot receivers over the past 5 weeks, and Mechie has run 65.6% of his routes from the slot in the past 5 weeks. So like he's been running from the slot. It's theoretically like it's a tough matchup for receivers, except for from the slot. Let's see if that's here. So it's negative overall for receivers, but like the slot is the one part
right,
that like
slot funnel a
little bit. So I don't know. Mechie's been running from the slot, so just one more little boost to Mechie, I guess. Any interest in Xavier Hutchinson?
I mean, he could be thrown in the mix, but I would put him last among the names I mentioned.
Okay, so behind Mechie and Woods. Okay. All right. Chiefs, we kind of talked about it already. You talked about Hollywood Brown being in there. Hard to know exactly what to make of the Chiefs at this point with everybody with Hollywood Brown back. Who do you like on the Chiefs? So we've got go ahead.
Yeah, Hollywood ran 15 routes, only a 33% route share. That makes him like really tough to trust. But he saw 8 targets on 15 routes. It's one of the highest target per route runs of the season. He caught 5 for 45. And I also kind of like what I think he can do for Xavier Worthy, who has really come on of late. He easily the highest scoring player on the Chiefs over their last 7 games. He's seen exactly 11 targets and 3 carries in back-to-back games, averages 20 fantasy points per game. A lot of that is touchdowns, but like that's part of the role. Like we saw this with Tyreek Hill back in the day, those little baby shovel pass touchdowns or the end arounds. And he's also like a player who's just been really unlucky this year. He ranks bottom 3 in catchable air yardage, throw rate. And so that's something that should regress the mean. And when it does, there's massive spike week potential. So no JPJ, like you said. So yeah, I really like him this week.
Nice. How much interest in DeAndre Hopkins?
Not much. I honestly might prefer Hollywood. Really, really tough to trust that 33% route share, but ideally that climbs 1, and then 2, like 8 targets on 15 routes. That's kind of crazy.
What do you make of the contract deal where it's like if DeAndre Hopkins runs 60+% of routes and they make the Super Bowl, then the trade becomes a 4th rounder the Chiefs gives up instead of a 5th rounder? Like, do you think that is the reason that he's not running significant routes, or is it just that he's old?
What is that contract? Is it 60% of routes in any game?
I think total. Like,
yeah, there's no chance he can come close to 60%.
Okay, so game, like, because there have been games where he's been a little bit over 60%.
Wait, who are we talking about? Hopkins?
Hopkins, yeah.
Oh, maybe. Yeah, no, dude, he hasn't hit a 66% route share all year. So that definitely could be it.
Yeah, that could be the reason. Interesting. All right, so not a ton of interest in DeAndre Hopkins.
I don't know. He could hit. It's just guessing game. I kind of think Hollywood excites me a little more at the price.
All right, so you like Hollywood and Worthy both better than Hopkins. Any interest in like a Justin Watson or Juju Smith-Schuster?
Yeah, Justin Watson has like a sick schematic matchup, best of any receiver on the team. He came really close to having a big score last week. I don't know why he keeps getting playing time, but he does. The team likes him. So, if you're MMEing, you definitely need some Justin Watson. But if you're making 3 lineups, I probably wouldn't play him.
Yeah, still 40% route participation last week. The one target was an end zone target, I believe, or at least a
deep shot,
deep ball where he was open. Yeah. So yeah, at least interesting on a short slate. All right, and then Steelers. So we have George Pickens back for this one. He is 6,600. How much interest in George Pickens?
Yeah, pretty interested. I will just say Chiefs best defense in the league against wide receiver ones. So it's not a good matchup. Matchups kind of like don't really matter for Pickens. He just goes off or he doesn't go off regardless of who's facing him. Worry a little bit about the injury, but it seems like they were playing conservative. And to the previous point is just like he can house these short passes and he can moss cornerbacks one-on-one. So yeah, matchups I don't think matter too much for him. I think where we have him in the projections is good.
Okay. All right. So I've got route share report up just so we can kind of look at in recent weeks. So this is last week without George Pickens. When was the last time George Pickens played? That was in week 13. George Pickens played. Just kind of want to see who else we can consider from the Steelers. And man, it's gross. I did not realize Calvin Austin had played that little without George Pickens.
Well, he might have gotten hurt in that week 13 game, but yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's right.
He has a good matchup. Just not a lot of upside with him. Well, what's the price? I don't even know it.
I want to say it's like 30, like maybe 4,200 now. Let's see. 4,200. Man, Van Jefferson has the best coverage grade matchup.
Yeah.
Any interest in Van Jefferson?
Calvin Austin, 65 yards in back-to-back games. 5 targets. I don't know.
But those are both without George Pickens.
Yeah. He did have 3 targets, 3 catches, 78 and a touchdown, I think, with Pickens. Another random spike week earlier in the year, but otherwise low volume, not really consistent. High yards per target given his role. I don't know. It's a good spot for him.
Yeah. He's also run a lot from the slot. It's a good matchup for slot receiver is another one of those.
Yeah, I would like him second most on that team, at least.
Yeah.
By a margin.
And then I mean, does the Van Jefferson coverage grade matchup do anything for you?
Not really.
All right. Fair enough.
You're an MME guy, so you really got to worry about that. But.
Yeah. I'll probably mix in a little bit. I was really in on him last week, and of course he got down at the 1 on a could have been a touchdown, so that was kind of brutal. On these 2 game slates, yeah, I throw a lot of dart throws at not the best players and just hope for the best, hope for some randomness.
I don't know that he has a single game over double-digit fantasy points this year.
Could have been last week if he just scored that. I actually don't even know if that was his only catch. It still probably would not have been. But yeah. Any other receivers to talk about?
Yeah, let me take a look. Tylan Wallace, maybe, just no Nelson Aguilar, but that's really thin.
What did his route share look like last week? Because Aguilar was out.
Yeah, it wasn't high. It was kind of weird when I was looking at their route shares. Like no one's route share jumped. Like despite Aguilar.
Yeah, it's interesting. And Bateman was a full-time player. Man, I got baited. No pun intended. By the air cast. Like people thought, I thought like he's definitely going to miss this game,
right?
And then he was in. So that was fairly surprising. Yeah, it's interesting.
Tylan Wallace was like basically just a deep threat in college. He has one 84-yard touchdown catch this year. Otherwise, has done nothing. So if you're an MME bro, it's a name to know. But
I think that makes sense. Yeah, throw him in there a little bit. All right, tight ends. Let's get to tight ends. Travis Kelce, the best projected. He's 5,300.
No, you got to sort by fantasy points per dollar.
Oh, you love the fantasy points per dollar more than the raw projection.
So 5,300 for Kelce is like crazy cheap, and he's still third best.
Yeah, that is
with Mark Andrews losing like 50% of the routes to Isaiah Likely. Crazy.
Yeah,
I think we're too low on Schultz. I'll say that.
Yeah, maybe it doesn't account enough for Tank Dell being out. This is a pretty high projection relative to what he's had, so I think it is accounted for.
Okay,
but
it's a good spot for Freiermuth for sure. I don't know how much I trust him, but probably right for the price.
Well, do you want to start there, Freiermuth? Do you want to start with the Pittsburgh? I think he's probably the only tight end you're playing for Pittsburgh. You're probably not playing Darnell Washington.
No. Well, Nicole Pruitt scored a touchdown last week.
That's true. That is true. I'm still not doing that. 7th best matchup for tight ends against Kansas City.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. You look at that. It's really slot and tight end. And that's what it's been, I feel like all year, or dating back to last year. Yeah. So it's a good spot for him. If we're talking tournaments though, like what's the move, Neil? Like, aren't you just going to be correlated to your quarterback at 90%?
Last week I did a ton of 2 tight end builds last week. Partially that was because I thought Rashad Bateman was going to be out, and I thought Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely might be the biggest beneficiaries there. It actually worked out anyway, because they both, I think, had pretty good games. Maybe at least Likely did. No, I think they both scored touchdowns. I think this could be another 2 tight end type slate where it's like, if you want to play Lamar, you need to find value somewhere. And I think tight ends is one of the best places to find value. So honestly, I'm not sure if I'll correlate with my quarterbacks as much on a 2-game slate. I don't know. Yeah, I will, I guess, but I will have a lot of 2 tight ends. So kind of want to look at them in a vacuum, to some extent, at least, just because got to figure out if you are playing 2, which 2 do you want to play? And Freiermuth looks like a pretty strong option just based on the matchup. And like you said, it's kind of in general, like the tight ends have some of the better matchups, I think. Maybe not. Oh, I guess it's a pretty good matchup for Kelce theoretically. Oh, and then Mark Andrews, the other instrument, because he's been running so much from the slot, and it's a great matchup for slot receivers for Baltimore. So I kind of think a lot of the tight ends on the slate have pretty good matchups, which makes me think might be a 2 tight end type slate. But yeah, I think I agree with you. Like often it does make sense to pair your tight end with your quarterback. Just there's really strong.
That's interesting. There. You said Better in the slot for who? For Andrews?
Yeah, so it's been for slot receivers against Houston, fourth best matchup.
Yeah, and so you also see that with split. So look at how tough they are against inline tight ends.
Yep.
And then so split is just basically if they're out wider in the slot. When you're talking about a tight end, that's almost always in the slot.
Okay. That's good to know.
And so let me pull up a slot rate for likely Andrews. When you pull it up for me.
Yep. So do you want me to do full season or just like the past 5 weeks?
No, you can do full season. Yeah. So just about 2/3 of the time, Andrews is in the slot, likely about 50% of the time. Yeah. Now, actually, maybe you're right. Maybe we'll do the last 5 weeks to account for Charlie Kolar.
Oops. We can do 6.
Yeah. Wow. Last 5 weeks, 78% Mark Andrews, 52% likely. So that looks like a great spot for Andrews. That was a good catch by you.
Thank you. Yeah, I noticed all of the slot receiver stuff. So then I went and looked on the Ravens who's running the most from the slot, and it's like, oh, it's Mark Andrews. Okay.
Yeah, because sometimes you don't see that overlap. So, sometimes it could just be like speedy slot wide receivers burning them deep. But no, this seems like they're maybe like funneling work to the shallow, intermediate, middle of the field.
So we're buying it. We're buying the
We're buying
Mark
it.
Andrews.
I love it.
All right. Hell yeah. Okay. So again, it comes back to I think it's a pretty good tight end slate in general. Like Frymuth has a great matchup. Andrews, great matchup. Kelsey, it's a strong matchup for tight ends against Pittsburgh. Dalton Schultz. Now we get Tank Dell out. Dalton Schultz gets a little bit of a boost. Isaiah Likely certainly playable at 3,500. Noah Gray, 20 targets over the past 4 games, I think. Like there's a lot of playable tight ends here. Do you have a preference? Do you have a ranking of the tight ends?
I kind of like how we have it. I just might bump Schultz up and maybe Gray over Likely, probably. Okay. And I mean, like, you can't sleep on Kelsey too much. 5,300 for Travis Kelsey, who can. We haven't seen him do jack shit since like, I don't know, early November, and he's old, so like maybe he's just like second half Adam Thielen from last year, where you just know by now not to play him. But
yeah, just falling off
for name brand value at 5,300.
And again, not a bad matchup for tight ends against Pittsburgh. Top 12 or so. All right. So you have it essentially in this order, but you want to bump up Gray slightly. And Schultz. You think Schultz over Kelsey?
Yeah.
Okay. Do we want to talk about defenses at all? Do you have any preference there?
7, 8, 6, 13, 8 targets for Kelsey so target volume's been there. And I just want to see Noah Gray. 1, 5, 5, 6, 4, 5. I mean, that's pretty good. Had those back-to-back multi-touchdown weeks. And we were on him one of those weeks. That was pretty sick.
Yeah. Against the Panthers that week, where he scored 2 touchdowns. Yes, over the past 5 games, 41 targets for Kelsey, so still over 8 targets per game. Noah Gray, 4 targets per game over that span. So both pretty usable. All right. Do you have any? I mean, I'd say the projections are usually pretty good. The defense projections at fantasy points. So if you just,
I think we've had the best defense projections this year.
I believe,
which is surprising because like week 8, I'm like, dude, our defense projections have been off every single week. Like, what are we doing? And Chris is like, well, actually, we've been the most accurate by a landslide. I'm like, oh, it's just
chaos. Like you can't accurately project defenses. So, so like if you're the closest, that's something.
I think this is right where it's, the top 3 tightly clustered. Chiefs, because they have a sick defense. Russ kind of sucks, and they should win the game. Steelers, because they have an elite defense, and you just never know. Maybe Chiefs offensive line is taking a step back. Mahomes has a gimpy ankle. Offense probably isn't as good as the record suggests. And then Ravens, I probably like more than the Steelers. I just think they win this game pretty easily. CJ Stroud, has just been eating sacks like absolute crazy levels this year.
Do you want to try making a lineup before we get out of here?
Yeah, Stroud has had two or more interceptions in half of his last 6 games. Has had 8 sacks in a game once, 4 or more sacks 6 times. Yeah, let's make a lineup.
That's a good note. Man, I did not realize he was sacked that much. I knew it was a bad offensive line, but that's a very good
been
note.
rough this year.
All right. So I think we both agree Lamar Jackson just the best quarterback play.
The best.
We both like Mark Andrews. We throw him in there right away.
Yeah. You want to do a triple?
Sure. Who do you want to put in? Zay Flowers?
Yeah,
And
Zay
Rashad
and
Bateman?
Bateman. And then our running backs are just going to be super gross. I mean, you could play Mix and maybe he breaks off a long run. We saw that last week. Last week was crazy, Neil, with like all the 60+ yard rushing touchdowns.
It was. I hated it so much for my
know,
best ball. It really crushed me. Chiefs defense. Just to kind of have an idea how much salary we have.
Yeah. Hunt, Nico.
Okay. And then maybe a second tight end will fit in there. We'll see. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, we still have a running back. And
Mechie.
Do we want to go Mechie or a punt tight end? I guess we go Mechie.
Oh, true. Okay, Neil.
Well, let's see.
Well, we'll see what Warren gets us.
Yeah, with Warren, we might be able to. Oops, I did Harris. That's not what I want to do. Warren, and then we have 4,500 left over. Oh, we could play Hollywood there. Keaton Mitchell,
Calvin Austin, you could play.
Calvin Austin.
Schultz.
And this is also one where
Schultz, screw it.
Where for large field GPPs, leaving a little salary on the table, not a bad idea. If you're trying to avoid dupes, like on a 2-game slate, there's a pretty good chance you're going to run into dupes, especially if you do play like a chalky construction, which we didn't really. I think Lamar triple stack is going to be a little bit unique on its own. But like often a lot of constructions, leaving a little bit of salary on the table makes sense on a 2-game slate. Leaving 400 here. I think this looks good. This looks like a great lineup.
Nice.
So we're not going to win a milli, but we'll win. How much is this?
200,000. Oh.
Divided by however many people.
What a nice little Christmas
copy
present.
Us, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to do one more? Or you want to get out of here?
Maybe we'll make a Henry team.
All right, let's make a Henry team. Good idea.
No Lamar.
Even though they're not negatively correlated as much as you thought.
Let's do let's do Mahomes, Worthy.
Hollywood or no?
Yeah, we can. Pickens. Nico, can we do that? Can we make that work?
It's going to be tough, but we can try.
We can try our best.
We're down to 34, 33. So now we got to go real cheap at tight end. We're not going to be able to afford Freiermuth. We can go, I guess, Texans defense in here since we're not playing Lamar. And then, I don't know if there's any like $5,000. If we play Hunt, actually, we might be able to fit in. We fit in Noah Gray with Hunt.
Let's do it.
Major Kansas City stack, right? I think. Wait, no, it can't. Noah Gray's 3,300. Are there any $2,500? Michael Pruitt. Oh man, this is gross.
Well, we can go drop down from Hollywood to someone else.
Okay.
Oh no, maybe we don't need the Hunt stack. Maybe is there like an even cheaper?
If we want to go like Rasheen Ali or Keaton Mitchell.
Yeah. Let's do it. Give yourself the late swap. Or not the late swap, the inactive swap.
Yeah. All right. So then we put Hollywood in. Then we have enough.
Or Justin Watson.
Well, now we can play Noah Gray.
Okay. Well, there you go. You figured it out.
Look at that. Look at that beauty. And this one now I could swap from Ali up to Keaton Mitchell. Would you rather have Ali or Keaton Mitchell if both are active? Do you think?
I don't know. Probably Keaton just for the upside.
Okay. So we're playing 2 Baltimore running backs. I think that's.
I mean, the dude hasn't had a single snap. Maybe that's wrong. Maybe it's Ali.
All right, we'll throw Ali in there for now. But I think the double Baltimore running back, even though we're not leaving a lot of salary on the table, not a lot of people are going to be playing Derrick Henry and Rasheen Ali together, I don't think. Plus, we've got the Kansas City triple stack. I think this works.
Okay.
Hell yeah. All right, there you go. We made 2 lineups. Scott, this is a fun, quick edition of Outside the Box. I enjoyed it. What else do you have coming up in the next, several days? What other content do you have? Where can people find you?
Fantasypoints.com. I have the slate breakdown, and then I have Outside the Box on Saturday.
Yeah, we'll be doing the regular Outside the Box for the main slate, which I imagine going to be kind of a short slate this week. I haven't even looked at it, but with Christmas games and a Thursday night game and Saturday, be a kind of short slate there. But we will be back doing that on Saturday. I will, of course, have my article for this 2-game slate will be up at Fantasy Points at some point today. I'll be doing my own show, actually on my own channel. If you want to go over this slate again, plus the showdown slates, I'll be in the Flannelverse in about 20 minutes with Jesse downside of me.
I'm going to watch it. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, it should be a fun one. Chopping that one up with Jesse with some more knowledge now that I've done this show with you. So that'll be a good one to break down. And I'm Player Q DFS on socials. Scott is Scott Barrett DFB on the socials. Check us out there as well. But otherwise, I'll see you either on my channel soon or Outside the Box on Saturday on the Fantasy Points YouTube channel. Thanks, everybody. Catch you later.
What?
Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.